The 49ers, Brandon Staley is on the staff. And I think it's as simple as Sorensen knows the defense and Staley is in a position to come in and just kind of augment everything.
Brandon Staley, learn the system, learn what we do. And then once you learn it, maybe you can add a few tweaks for us too within the confines of you and your Vic Fangio background and add something to it, right?
Let me start out by saying this. I'm a huge Kyle Shanahan fan and supporter. I normally agree and support the vast majority of the decisions he's made, but not this one. Let's get into it, y'all. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action. Had to jump on here. There's been some big news. Defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen has officially been hired, an internal promotion, as we all know, as 49ers fans and followers. But there was also something else. There was another person that was hired onto the San Francisco 49ers staff. Brandon Staley.
Oh, fuck.
I will just go ahead and say it from the jump. I am not a Brandon Staley fan. I think the guy is a cheeseball and seemingly full of shit, which is why I really do not like this hire by Kyle Shanahan, bringing on Brandon Staley as the assistant head coach, whatever title they needed to give him in order to get the deal done. And let me explain. So as I stated in the very beginning, I normally agree with a lot of the things that Kyle Shanahan does, whether it be roster moves, coaching moves, play calls, whatever it is. I agree with it. Now, there's some debate on some of the play calls in certain situations, in certain games. I get all that. I'm not talking about that right now. But what I am talking about is bringing on Brandon Staley to the staff. Now, I hear a lot of pundits out there, beat writers, guys who I respect, like David Lombardi. He's somebody that does good reporting. But he is saying that, some of the things Brandon Staley brings to the table is defensive game planning. And Brandon Staley is going to be just another mind in the room to help bring in potentially new looks, new schemes, new styles for our defense to help get them back to where they were with DeMeco Ryans and Robert Saleh, for that matter, because obviously there was a big drop off last year with Steve Wilks as a defensive coordinator.
Brandon Staley's going to be a whiteboard guy. He's going to be an assistant that is helping out with scheme. And guess what? He's already proven that he's good at that. In 2020, Brandon Staley was a defensive coordinator of the Rams. They were the best defense in football by a country mile. This guy's not here to call plays for the 49ers. He is here to give insight, to help build the game plan. And that's something that he's done a very good job at before.
So the first thing I'll say to that is Brandon Staley runs and has historically ran a 3-4 defense. Okay. The 49ers, as we all know, again, because it makes a lot of waves due to the fact whenever seemingly every year new coaching staff on the defensive side need to get hired. And Kyle Shanahan does not want to change the defense. They want to keep the 4-3 defense, which has made them successful. Rush 4, zone coverage in the back end. Well, as we saw from Steve Wilks last year, it's a lot harder to learn a defense, specifically a scheme that you historically have not run and have not mastered, so to speak. So I think, him automatically coming in here and being a defensive mind, adding to the game planning, he's going to have to learn the defense. Similar to Steve Wilks, there was challenges with that. Steve Wilks didn't bring any of his staff members. Obviously, Brandon Staley's now not in a position to bring over anybody else additionally with him. I mean, he's an assistant for that matter. But that's kind of something that, okay, well, how long is it going to take Brandon Staley to master and pitch in his ideas when it's a completely different defense that he's traditionally been comfortable with and has ran during his entire career? That's number one. Number two is he was a horrible head coach. I get it. He's not a head coach for the 49ers, but that does say something. His defense with the Los Angeles Chargers was atrocious. They gave up, I think it was in 2023, just this past season, they started off 5-9 and they gave up 63 points against the Raiders. I think they lost that game 63-21, if my memory serves me correctly. That is clearly showing he had lost the team at that point, and the team did not want to play for this man any longer. And when you're such a bad head coach, how much credibility do you have coming into a building? Not only from peers, other staff members, other coaching staff members, but also just the players. Are they really going to go in and take Brandon Staley's ideas and think it's some miracle that this guy is providing them new, clever schemes and pointing things out that the opposing offense is doing as they're game planning and implementing what they're going to do for that week? I don't know. But what I do know is he was a horrible head coach. His stats, I believe, as a head coach was regular season, 24 wins, 24 losses. And then I also know he had one playoff appearance. They were up 27-0 against the Jaguars. And ultimately they ended up losing that game 31-30, being up 27 points in the playoffs. Just insane. And you have to remember, this was also the guy that was Mr. fucking analytics. He was the most aggressive and sometimes just blatantly dumb for all the fourth downs that he would go for as a head coach, and then becoming a Mr. Politician and basically a cheese ball. I have other words I could use for it, but for the sake of not getting too crazy with some of the things I'm going to say, he was just a cheese ball. He seemed like a phony. He seemed like a fake. And I think his head coaching, being the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, that quickly exposed that. And he had 2.5, 3 seasons with the Chargers and ultimately got kicked to the can. But what got him the Chargers role? Well, he was a defensive coordinator. Okay. And I hear a lot of people saying when he was defensive coordinator with the Los Angeles Rams back in 2020, they were number one defense, best in the business. And it was all because of Brandon Staley. What then ultimately he started getting a lot of hype, a lot of shine, and then he got the Chargers job. So he spent 1 year under McVay. You have to remember during the 2020 season, that's also when they had a whole bunch of fucking studs on that team. Aaron Donald was younger, Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Floyd. I mean, there was a bunch of dudes on that team. It wasn't like Brandon Staley for 1 year as a defensive coordinator with no other prior defensive coordinating experience that he came in and worked his magic and just turned shit around. And then, they became number one. It was all because of him. No, I don't believe that whatsoever. And I also think just 1 year as a defensive coordinator, again, is he qualified to be on the staff? I know he's not the defensive coordinator. I know he's not the head coach, but you know what I do know? He loves the spotlight. He loves analytics, and he spent 1 year as a defensive coordinator who did good, but also ran a different defense. So I find it a little interesting that he was the one to get hired on top of Nick Sorensen getting promoted to defensive coordinator. But this is his 5th NFL team. He started off in Chicago in 2017 as an outside linebacker coach. And then in 2019, he went to the Denver Broncos as an outside linebacker coach, and then ultimately got the DC role in 2020. So this is his 5th team, NFL team that he's been on. And I just don't understand what value this guy's going to bring. I understand that he is trying to resurrect his career from an atrocious head coaching job. Kyle clearly didn't feel comfortable enough giving him the DC role. So he's just going to be an additional strategist. I just don't know what value he will bring as a coach with his input when outside of 1 year as Rams defensive coordinator, he does not have much to show for. And when there's a guy who's been a head coach, who's been a defensive coordinator, reporting to somebody who has never been a head coach, never been a defensive coordinator in Nick Sorensen, it just makes me wonder, how is that going to fit internally behind the scenes when the cameras aren't there? Is Brandon Staley going to be okay basically having no power in terms of if Nick wants to go with this, Brandon Staley's going to have to roll with that? I think it could cause some friction. It could cause some weird dynamic. I know this is total speculation, but it's something I just want to bring attention to because I've been seeing a lot of people on the internet that don't like this hire. A lot of Chargers fans are saying, hey, you guys are getting a shitty coach. And then I'm seeing other people defend Brandon Staley. specifically beat writers and pundits trying to spin this as a good thing. Well, of course they're going to spin it as a good thing. They work for the team. All they do is report on the team. So of course, naturally, they're going to want to spin it. And it's part of the problem with being such a good football team for as many consistent years as the 49ers have under the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era, is because every year, how many coaches are poached from the team? It's a lot. And so I understand that you don't have the pick of the litter because you always go deep in the playoffs and then your coaches get poached after front office people. I mean, it's been extremely challenging for Kyle, and I give him a lot of props for it to be able to deal with as much turnover as they have on offense and on defense. But Brandon Staley was still available for a reason. And as many people want to say that Brandon Staley, the value he's going to add, I think he realized he didn't have a decision to make. I think obviously he wanted the defensive coordinator spot, but he was in no position to ask for it because no other team was hiring him. And then it just so happens to be that the one team that is going to offer you something happens to be a team that's gone deep into the playoffs where you can get a lot of spotlight. We've seen other coaches on the staff get moved up into higher positions, whether it be guys that become offensive coordinators, guys that become head coaches on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's no secret that the 49ers have been a factory for producing coaches. Look around the league. There are Kyle Shanahan coaches everywhere. John Lynch, front office staff everywhere across the NFL. But the whole Brandon Staley thing, it's just a red flag to me. I understand that Kyle vetted and clearly knows ball better than me, better than you, better than 99.8% of the people out there in the world. But it also makes me wonder, how does Kyle feel about Nick Sorensen? The fact that Brandon Staley is there to help on the defensive side of the ball, it almost makes you think that Kyle isn't as sure about Nick Sorensen, who I think has a diverse background, who I imagine should have success, but I don't know. This Brandon Staley one, not a fan of. I think the guy is a phony, and I think he is desperate to stay in the NFL versus going back down to college and living that life. So just had to get my 2 cents out there. I will be back with a discussion about the new defensive coordinator, Nick Sorensen. You know, he played in the NFL for 9 years as a safety. He started coaching in 2013 with Seattle. He was with Seattle for a long time, I think it was like 7 years. And he ultimately left in 2020 to go to the Jags. And he was a special teams coordinator there, which was kind of interesting. And then he's only been with the staff on the 49ers since 2022. So it's not like this guy's been a long-term Kyle Shanahan disciple, but I'll be back with that. But just wanted to bring it out about Brandon Staley. I'm not a fan. I'm not opposed to being proven wrong, but let me know what you guys think. I'm really curious to hear what actual 49er fans think, not biased Chargers fans or beat writers or pundits that work directly for the NFL. I'm always open to have my mind changing, but that is just how I felt about Brandon Staley. I've talked about him in other videos about how I never liked him as a head coach. He's had 1 year as a defensive coordinator. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And I'll see if anybody has any differing views. If you guys feel like me, let me know that too. But again, short and sweet. I'll be back later on this week. More updates coming out of the combine. Nick Sorensen officially named the defensive coordinator, first-time defensive coordinator. So until then, like, comment, subscribe. Hit me up. Peace.